tank located in NCR with a focus on research-based policy advice. It's a think tank which was set up considering that we were thinking in terms of having something like a NBER structure in our own country. We have been partly successful in undertaking research on contemporary issues. But as COVID set in, we were worried with especially the situation that was emerging, once in a century type of pandemic, lockdowns. We started doing lots of webinars. We introduced the webinar series thinking we will work on the contemporary economic issues, bring the best minds from across the world on Indian issues and global issues. And we have been so successful that we have done about 250 webinars. We also benefited from the G20 presidency. We did series of 11 of webinars on new international economic order. We also did 6 webinars each on climate and women empowerment. We also worked a lot on different aspects that would trouble the global economy and the domestic economy. The experts that we invited included a blend of domestic speakers, scholars, and researchers, and foreign speakers, scholars, and researchers from the best of best universities. We have had speakers from Harvard, from Columbia, from Princeton. We have also had 3 Nobel laureates come and speak. And now we are trying for the 4th Nobel laureate on institutions to come and speak, because if we have to achieve Viksit Bharat status, our institutions have to be very strong and they have to deliver. To that extent, great sense of satisfaction, one can say EGROW has been able to achieve some success in providing policy-oriented advice, research-based advice to the policymakers, because in each of these topics that were covered, each of the sessions that were done, we had the best of best minds from across the world, including India, to come and speak with us on topics like inflation targeting, unemployment, name it, and we have done it. It is about 6 months back when we were caught in a debate as to what is the growth model for our country. While I'm editing a book along with Dr. Arvind Virmani to be published by Springer on the Indian growth model, where about 22 speakers with 22 experts are contributing a chapter, the thought was, which is the best economic model for our country? It is then that we thought, instead of always looking at foreign countries to learn, within our country, there are states which are doing exceedingly well. And there are states which are just not doing well at all, rather deteriorating in the growth process. Why not we learn from each other? It was in that very context, we took Punjab as an illustration of a state which is deteriorating very fast, from number 1 position in 2000 to 18th position in 2023 out of 28 states. And then there are states like Telangana, Haryana, Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, which are doing very well. Overall, if we take the per capita income into account, if we take the socio-economic indicators, you would agree with me, Kerala is doing exceedingly well. We have then embarked on a journey of requesting experts from each of the states to come and share their experience of their state. What is the mantra that catapulted them on the growth path so that other states can learn from each other? Today, we have invited Professor Nirmala and a team of experts on the panel to discuss the economy of Kerala. Before I introduce Professor Nirmala and her team, I also would like to note that today something untoward and very sad happened in Delhi. One of our dear friends, Dr. Vivek Debroy, passed away. And Professor Vivek Debroy was not only a member and chair of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, he was also a friend of EGROW Foundation. Whenever we wanted him to come and speak, especially on subjects of his expertise, law and economics, the interface, and even otherwise, he would always be willing to oblige us. As you know, he did lots of work on philosophy and Vedic traditions, translated many of those works from Sanskrit to English, and each one of those works that he did was groundbreaking. And therefore, we all would go meet him, seek his guidance and advice on various issues. A very good person, a dear friend, a scholar, and a good policymaker. We lost him. I don't think I need to introduce him because he's so well known and everywhere you find about him. So I'm going to request, with the permission of Nirmala, the chairperson for today's session, that we observe a brief silence in his honor, and then I will introduce Professor Nirmala to take the session forward.
That will be true. That will be nice. Let's have a moment of silent prayer for his soul.
Yes. Thank you very much. Let me now introduce Professor Nirmala. She is the chairperson for today's session on Kerala. She was a faculty of economics for 26 years for post-graduation and graduation, and has handled subjects such as financial markets and systems, international trade and monetary systems. She has experience in budget analysis and analysis of economic issues of the country and rural economic development as part of the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan community development projects. Presently, she is the Dean of Extension and Incubation in St. Teresa's College, Ernakulam, with overall charge of community development projects undertaken by the college and responsible for overall guidance to the business incubation and entrepreneurship development initiatives of the college. She was member of the Public Expenditure Review Committee of the Government of Kerala in 2021. She was also a member of the Working Group on Gender and Development to prepare plan of action for 14th five-year plan of the Government of Kerala in 21-22. She was also a member of the Working Group on Financial Resource Mobilization to prepare action plan for 14th five-year plan of the Government of Kerala in 21-22. And Dr. Nirmala Padmanabhan is a director in and holds paid-up capital of Bhumi Women's Collective Private Limited. Dr. Nirmala is a postgraduate in economics, holds a doctorate and a special knowledge and practical experience in economics. She is also on the board of a commercial bank, wherein she is now gaining lots of experience in public policy. With this, I would now like to invite Professor Nirmala to take over the session, introduce her team, and share your thoughts with us on the economy of Kerala. Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Charan Singh, and thank you, EGROW Foundation. I would really say that I really enjoyed most of the sessions, particularly the idea that India, each state needs to learn from the best practices of other states. That's a real, and I think this series has had a powerful, strong launch through the session of Sanjeev, where he highlighted that normally in our development discourse, we talk about the north-south perspective in Indian development. But he really highlighted that we need to replace that discourse with an east-west discourse rather than a north-south. That is very, very, and all these sessions, I think are really, really, some of your sessions, I think have got thousands of views because people seem to be viewing it later. And that is what is more comfortable. People can view it and read it at their own leisure. And I repeatedly listen to some of the very key issues that I'm interested in. So thank you so much for giving us this to present the state the discourse on Kerala. And I don't think we could have had a better day than today, because today is November 1st, 1956 is the day that Kerala was born. So today is actually the birthday of, it so happened that today's Friday is November 1st. And that way it is a very unique day for us also. Now, as part of the discussion panel to deliberate on the performance of our state, we have three eminent people. We have Dr. KJ Joseph with us, who is currently the director of the Gulati Institute of Finance and Taxation. He is also the president of Globalix and founding editor-in-chief of Innovation and Development, published by Taylor and Francis, London. Earlier positions that he held include Ministry of Commerce Chair Professor at Center for Development Studies, visiting Senior Fellow at RIS New Delhi, Professor Jawaharlal Nehru University, IT Policy Consultant of UNESCO of Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar, Vietnam, Thailand, and the Yunnan province of China, expert in innovation studies at Tianjin University of Finance and Economics, China, selected under the program of Search for Global Experts. He has also been a consultant to UNCTAD. His areas of expertise include science, technology, and innovation for development with a focus on information technology, industry studies, especially electronics, FDI, trade, globalization and WTO, regional development with a focus on Kerala economy and natural resource-based development with a focus on plantation agriculture. Apart from over 80 research papers and a number of policy-oriented reports, he has 6 books published by 5 leading international publishers, including Oxford University, Routledge, and Macmillan. To his credit, he has delivered invited lectures, keynote addresses, and presented papers in over 80 seminars, conferences held in 35 countries and over 125 seminars in India. So, Professor Joseph, I welcome you to this panel discussion. Then I would like to introduce Dr. Ramakumar, who is an economist and a professor with the School of Development Studies, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai. Trained as an undergraduate and postgraduate in agriculture science, he received his PhD in quantitative economics from the Indian Statistical Institute, Kolkata Premier Institute. He also serves as an expert member in the Kerala State Planning Board at present. Previously, he was the NABARD Chair Professor at TIS, as well as the Dean of the School of Development Studies. He has held visiting appointments at the London School of Economics and Political Science, University of Zurich, Queen Mary University of London, and Goa University. He is also a member of the Research Programs Committee, Indian Society of Agriculture Economics, and is part of the editorial board of the Journal Review of Agrarian Studies. His work has largely been on Indian economy, agrarian studies, and agriculture economics, with special focus on rural banking and agriculture research, And his most recent book is Distress in the Fields, Indian Agriculture After Liberalization, published in 2022. Without much this, we know that he'll be focusing on the agriculture performance of the state. Now, the last person in the panel, the very eminent person, is Sri Balagopal. He is a former chairman of the board of Federal Bank Limited. He is also a trustee of Anaha Trust, member of the governing council of the Center for Management Development Trivandrum, member of the advisory board of Fourth Way Foundation, member of the board of Timed Medical Devices Incubator of SCTIMST. Sir completed his BA and MA from Loyola College Madras University and joined the Indian Administrative Service in 1977 and worked in Manipur and Kerala. He had the unique track record of leaving his service to take up something as challenging as setting up an entrepreneurship in Kerala. In 1983, he resigned from IAS to promote a venture to make high-tech biomedical devices for the first time in the country. Acquiring the know-how from Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute for Medical Sciences and Technology, Trivandrum, and with the support of National Research Development Corporation and Kerala State Industrial Development Corporation, he set up his venture, Penpal Limited, near Trivandrum. In 1999, Penpal entered into a joint venture with the Thermo Corporation of Japan. Today, Thermo Penpal Limited is the biggest manufacturer of blood bags in India and one of the world's biggest makers of high-tech biomedical devices. In 2012, he sold his stake in the company and turned to investing in startups, mentoring entrepreneurs, writing books on entrepreneurship, travel, and his many other interests. Mr. Balagopal runs a trust which supports social projects in Kerala and Manipur in primary health, primary education, and rural livelihoods. And I think he has come full circle from a time when he used he availed the services of KSIDC. He is right now the chairperson of Kerala State Industrial Development Corporation. That's, I think, coming full circle back to lead the institution. So we have he will naturally be speaking with his own experience. He'll be speaking on the manufacturing and industrial sector in Kerala. So with these three eminent people, they will be highlighting the different dimensions. And to start off, to set the background tone, I would say generally Kerala is perceived to be an outlier in every aspect. In all academic discourses, you find, even when we go for seminars, they always say Kerala is different from the rest of India. Maybe in various ways you say that. It could be one in a positive way. Sometimes it is said as God's own country with its own lush beauty, Western Ghats, long coastline and beauty, and that way it is different. It is also different in the number of replicable growth models or models which it has shown to not only the rest of India, but also the whole of the rest of the world, I would say some of them. Some of them are most recent is a palliative care model which is started in Kerala. Then the women self-help groups, the Kudumbashri, the decentralized planning, and of course the very popular Kerala model of development. For some of you who don't know, I'll explain a bit of that Kerala model to set a tone, and then I'll hand it over to Professor Joseph to explain in detail. Before that, I would also like to highlight that Kerala is also now signaling very strong, sending red signals to the rest of the country on the need to promote sustainable development. That you cannot pursue growth per se, destroying the environment. The reason landslides, the floods all indicate that it holds important lessons for us as well as for the rest of India, that we really need to focus on sustainable development. Now, coming back to the Kerala model, this Kerala model of development was, I think it is lot of scholarship has focused on this Kerala model. For some of you who might not be familiar with this, This actually was highlighted towards the 1980s when a CDS Center for Development Studies paper was published, which highlighted that despite having a very low income, in fact, in the 1970s, after independence, if you read Sanjeev's paper also highlights that after independence, Kerala was one of the laggard states with very low growth in terms of per capita income and all that. And 1970s, our per capita income was much below the national average. But despite that, the CDS study highlighted that Kerala had achieved very high social indicators of development. And in the 1980s, you will find that the development discourse was really focusing on human development. Till then, it was a growth kind of concept. The 1980s, you find the concept of development embraced human development. Kerala was doing extremely well with, high literacy levels, high health indicators, and social justice, for which was unbelievably high for a country with very low per capita income. In fact, you had a lot of international scholars also speaking on this. You had Richard Franke and Barbara Chester in 1992, who stated that if Kerala were an independent country, it would be the ninth poorest in the world, and yet it had the world's highest levels of healthcare, education, and social justice. And you have Jean Ress and Amartya Sen, who cites the strides that the state has made in human development, and implying that India's policymakers needed to learn lessons from what could be done with limited resources. In fact, it offered a message of hope among economies in the whole world who are otherwise trapped in low incomes and weak growth, that even if you have low incomes, it is possible to achieve high levels of human development. So that was a strong message that was given by the country, by the state of Kerala, to not only the other states of India, but also to many underdeveloped countries of the world. It challenged, I would say, the right-leaning academic obsessed with growth rates, and who said that nations needed income growth first, which would then trickle down to the bottom. And for the left-leaning academicians, the message was that radical redistributive policies worked wonders, and that socialist self-reliance was desirable, and capitalist globalization was unnecessary and even undesirable. That was a general message in the 1980s and 90s. But towards the end of, the last century, we have eminent scholars debating on this. We had and a number of scholars saying that this model was not sustainable, financially sustainable. And most noteworthy among them was Sri Jagdish Bhagwati, who was a forceful proponent. He said that the accent on human development actually risked devaluing economic growth. Growth needed competitive markets, which would strengthen the state's finances and sustain the ability to fund welfare and public goods. And in this context, Kerala model was cited as a fiscally unsustainable model. But general development studies indicate two broad phases, like how Sanjeev was highlighting in his paper also. After independence up to 1990s, the state had very laggard growth. But post 21st century, last 20-30 years, the state has witnessed a rebound in economic growth. And now the state's growth is much above, even without accounting for remittances. The state's per capita income is 152% of around 50 to 60% higher than the national average. And if you take the remittances also into account, it's much higher. The state tops in a number of indicators, including the Sustainable Development Index, the Human Development Index, the multidimensional poverty index. All those indexes, the state is number one. And that the model, Kerala is supposed to have received a revival of economic growth. Now, there are different explanations, which I'm sure all these people, I'll stop here because this is where we really need to take off. And from here, I think the three eminent panelists will be discussing the development of the state in recent times. So over to you, Dr. Joseph.
Come on, share it. Yeah, good evening. I think I cannot appreciate Dr. Charan Singh enough for this wonderful initiative. I congratulate you for your great accomplishments in this initiative. And especially I appreciate you for organizing this event on such a date, and you could not have chosen a particular date than November 1st, the birthday of Kerala. I don't know whether it is by accident or by choice. Whatever it is, the outcome is wonderful. Kudos to you. Now, it's always...
Professor Nirmala's choice of the date.
Already, whatever. Okay, Nirmala, credit to you too. It is always a pleasant experience to... You have to make me a co-host to share the slides. Please make me a co-host to share the slide.
Vivek is doing so. Vivek?
KJ Joseph, unverified, whatever. Just wait here. Do it. So, it's always a pleasant experience to be with people whom you keep in high esteem and appreciate. In that sense, the speakers of the day and the chairperson of the day are indeed people whom I keep in very high esteem and very high appreciation for. Okay, chairperson of the day, Dr. Nirmala, thank you for that very liberal introduction and introduction of me, and an outstanding introduction of the topic. There is nothing much is in fact left with to deal with. What I am going to speak about, this is not a seminar for Public Service Commission preparation students. It is for, I think it is more or less the scholarly community are here. Can you please make me the co-host so that I can share the slide?
Video presenter. So please try sharing.
KJ Joseph is the name. Am I right? That's the shade. Not gift. Okay, KJ Joseph, right. So, what I'm trying to see, any problem when Kerala economy can be seen from very different shades of view. Dr. Nirmala has put it in a kind of Kerala model of development on which I don't think that no state has got so much academic attention in the academic parlance. At the same time, I'm inclined to believe that there is always something more to learn. This is the approach that I'm taking about Kerala. So what I'm trying to do is, I'm trying to reflect upon Kerala economy, which way now, in the context of the 16th Finance Commission. As you are aware, in this country, finance commissions, which are appointed once in every 5 years, they do play an important role in the economic performance, particularly which in the fiscal performance, fiscal health of the state, which in turn crucially shapes the development of the state. Although we are living in a world wherein we are very much for advocating a policy wherein the states should be taking a back seat and market the upfront role. This is what, in this context, so I'm articulating Kerala, where does it stand today, and how to understand the reasons thereof. So let me just give you a preview, because I know I am given, how many minutes I am given? Something, 20 minutes, 25 minutes?
20 minutes.
20 minutes, I know that since Nirmala is very friendly with me, she will give me 5 minutes more, I suppose, and I can take a few minutes. So it will be some 25 plus, we'll stop it. Okay, now it is 5:35. Okay, I will start with something which is very common, which everybody knows, about select indicators of economic performance in terms of social indicators of development. Then I move, annotation request, approve or decline. What is this annotation request? WebEx, decline or accept? These are all, we always use Zoom. WebEx, approve?
So decline.
Decline, okay, yeah. I start with the conventional social indicators, wherein I'll argue it's a preview, for otherwise people can live up to that, So when we argue that Kerala is an outstanding performance, yes. Then I get into the economic indicators, wherein I would like to say that we are yet to reach the destination, we are yet to reap our potential. Then coming to the fiscal indicators, we'll argue that it is often shown as a fiscally stressed state. Now the question is, in search of the roots of why Kerala stands where it stands today, I'm inclined to believe that this story is properly explored. I'm trying to put some perspective to it. I would like to argue that it is, we can see the problematic from two broad as perspective. One is exogenous perspective, factors which are outside Kerala. Others are endogenous to the state. To the extent that I am going to deal with in the context of Finance Commission, I would like to take, also because of the lack of time, I would like to focus only on exogenous factors shaping Kerala, where it is and how it is. Coming to exogenous factors, I would like to articulate Finance Commission and its role in states' development. And that cannot be complete without articulating the prevailing fiscal federal relations and how it evolved over time in facilitating the development of a state. Then I will come to naturally 15th Finance Commission on Kerala. Then I will make an attempt towards articulating Kerala model from a fiscal federal perspective, which was not done so far. So I would like to put that in that prism. If you put Kerala model from a fiscal federal perspective, in a fiscal federal system, how does it look like? Then I will ask, finally, I will argue that there is the need for Finance Commission to revisit all its criteria, not one, all its criteria which has been used. So this is the story that I am going to say. And then it's not moving. Expand. Okay. Press into the. Okay. What is it like? I can't do it from here. Okay, right. Okay, friends, I'm sorry for the disturbance. Okay, I'm going to tell the familiar story for all of you. To begin with, Kerala, the outstanding performer. Look at the HDI ranking. It is head and shoulders above the state all India average. Our infant mortality rate is comparable to US. Life expectancy comparable to US. So on and so forth, I can go on. Now, today we are living in the world of SDGs. Where do we stand? Niti Aayog says that Kerala is topmost. Of course, Chandigarh is a union territory among the Indian states. Kerala is above all the other states. Now, coming to multidimensional poverty, we are almost half the rate of all India level, 24% and 14.9, yeah, 24%. So What I'm trying to say that Niti Aayog argues that we are much successful. Kerala leads in social protection. So, for example, if you go by something like 64 lakhs individuals get some way or other the social protection of the states. In fact, there is hardly any segment of the Kerala society which doesn't get the helpful hands of the state if they are in need. That way we are way above the national average and all the states. Now, performance in terms of modern digital infrastructure, the Kerala curve is always above the all India average. Be it telephone density, of course, it's no more interesting. Be it internet subscription, all equipped to kind of take the state to the industry 4 or whatever. There are other laurels which we can add. Kerala is recognized as the top states in terms of startup. In fact, I'm sure my dear friend, esteemed friend, Sri Balagopal will elaborate on that. We are along with Gujarat, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu for facilitating startup. And recently, it is also shown that in terms of ease of doing business, the state is known for labor militancy, etc., etc. The state has jumped from 15th position to 28th position to 15th position. And so what more? These are all highly points on which every Keralite could feel proud about. When it comes to economic performance, you all know that the standard textbook theory of structural transformation, wherein the share of different sectors change in accordance with the development. We are finding a situation wherein share of agriculture in 1991 was almost 29%. Today it is little more than something like 10%. It is, but I'm really sure Professor Ramakumar will elaborate on this thing. I'm not going to deal at length about it, but nonetheless, it is something something which we have to deal about. Coming to the industrial sector, the share has been declining, and particularly the manufacturing sector. I would say that this is one of the states which has been recording the fastest rate of deindustrialization. That is something which there has been a slight turnaround in the recent past. In fact, the only person very powerfully articulating the potential of Kerala in this area is with us. You will be listening from him. Coming to service sector, you will find that it is almost doubled during the period under consideration. This is an important information. Keep in mind, this has got its implications. I'm showing these things not for information, which we will be using later for our analytics. So we have agriculture. Now, coming to overall economic performance in terms of GSDP growth, if you calculate the annual average growth rate of the state in terms of agriculture, industry, and services, you will find that the performance of Kerala's industrial sector has been way below the national average. In all the, for example, you will find that this is by, the last is for the entire period. The last one is for the entire period. The first decade, second decade, third decade, and the last one is for the last bars are for the entire decade. You will find that agriculture has been, showing a poor performance. And if you look at overall performance of India and Kerala, Kerala's performance during the last 40 years, 30 years, to 91 onwards, 91 to under 30 years, has in fact been marginally lower than the national level. Anyone who has traveled in this country will be surprised to know that this state with enormous potential, Kerala could grow at least, I would argue, twice the rate of India. We have not grown. This should be a point that we should be concerned about. I am not going to elaborate on, for example, increasing unemployment. I'm not going to elaborate on particularly declining labor force participation of women. Of course, between the last two surveys, it has shown some 20-point increase. This unemployment is of voluntary nature, but I'm not going to do the details. Now, coming to the fiscal performance of the state, everybody knows that Kerala is one of the most fiscally stressed states in the country. And for Kerala government would argue that we are denied very often the constitutionally provided entitlements, and on this ground, the Kerala government, for the first time in the history of Indian federalism, has approached the Honorable Supreme Court in search of justice. And it doesn't mean that Kerala is not doing its homework. You look at last 2 years, for example, Kerala and all states on revenue as a percentage of revenue receipts. It was all states 61%, Kerala was 69%. And Kerala increased that to 79%, 10-point increase in a matter of 1 year. So similarly, if you take on-tax revenue to revenue receipts also, we will find that Kerala has been performing well. But at the same time, the reasons that I am going to highlight later, you will find that share of central tax as a proportion of percentage of revenue receipts, while it is on average, it is 23%, Kerala it is 9.8%. And when it is coming to grants in aid in revenue receipts, why it is, Kerala it is slightly higher as compared to all India average in 2023. In the current year, it is, the previous year, it is 9% and 11%, thanks to the revenue deficit grant which we have been receiving. Now, the story of increased committed expenditure, which has been talked about by other states, including Tamil Nadu and other South Indian states, I don't want to repeat here. That is very well, and it's actually a problematic of the pattern of development. The factors that induces development of the state has also led to increased committed expenditure, which I will turn it again later. Now, coming to the, in terms of on-tax revenue of the state, you will find that on revenue as a percentage of GSDP, it is Kerala, it is 8.3%. All state average is 7.7, and it is 8.3 and 8.2 in the last fiscal. The point here is to be noted and well described in the popular media is that Kerala has shown a steady decline in the share of its tax to GSDP ratio, as K.K. George articulated something like 12.5% in the early 80s. It has now declined to something like, say, 8%. This is something which we have to consider, which will come later again, why this has been. Now, coming to the debt position, this is the most important point which we have been talked about Kerala is one of the most indebted states. We have 35% of the GSDP as our outstanding debt, while it is only 25% for all state average. So this is Kerala. Kerala is outstanding, to sum up the whole story, Kerala is an outstanding performance in social indicators. In fact, as our chairperson said, paradox. You have outstanding performance in terms of human indicators, but poor performance in economy and leading to fiscal performance. This is a story which has been all around talked about. This is something, the popular story which has been told in the, which we all know. Now coming to the why Kerala performed the way it performed. Now, when I go in search of the roots of the performance, as I said, I would say that there are two sets of factors, exogenous factors and endogenous factors. Exogenous factors are such as our own problems, which internal problem, which I don't want to elaborate. Given the context of the debate, I would like to focus on the exogenous factors. When we deal with exogenous factors, there are two aspects of that comes to my mind. First is Finance Commission. Finance Commission as an institution. Secondly, the role of individual states in its own development and the development of the union. These are the two factors which I am going to highlight here. Coming to Finance Commission, Charan Singh said that Nobel Prize winners are going to speak over here, and we are well aware of the role of institutions in shaping development. It is well known by now. And these institutions cannot afford to be rigid and inflexible. Institutions get formed as a response to the context, and as context change, institutions change. And that is called co-evolution. Institutions needs to co-evolve, and if these institutions fail to co-evolve, they can even be inimical to development. This is the basic premise on which I make my argument. When you are talking about Finance Commission in India, when it was formed, growing from what is called Musgrave and others, the basic concern of the basic concerns of Finance Commission was to ensure basic provision of basic minimum public goods, public services in an almost equitable manner in all across the state. In a country which was trying to address the basic development problems. And Musgrave, the three dictums of Musgrave. What is it? Distribution, allocation, and stability. I was always wondering as a development scholar, if Musgrave was born in India, the first time would have been development. Writing from the US, of course, it was possible, but had Musgrave grown, is here with us, he would have told us, why are you not brought development so far? And of course, we will argue that kindly don't entrust all the responsibilities of the development problem of the country with the Finance Commission. You have all government departments, ministries, they all should do. But my dear friends, please remember, in this country, if the states have a role to play in development, and almost half of the revenue of the states are coming from the union through Finance Commission, they indeed have a role in development. Now, coming to the point. So what I'm trying to say that when Finance Commission was formed, the context was different. But today, when we are talking about Finance Commission, as we are talking today, for the first time in the history of India, whether you like it or not, the Prime Minister of the country has articulated in unequivocal terms, transforming India to a developed economy, which I would call it as Division 2047. According to Prime Minister, again I add, he said, and in accomplishing this vision, Honorable Prime Minister was again unequivocal. He stated, India grows if and only if the state grow. Now, in this context, the central challenge of the Finance Commission, 16th Finance Commission, which was appointed after the explicit articulation of India where it would like to be in 2047, it has to be cognizant of the national vision. Otherwise, I would call institutions are not co-evolving and they can be inimical to development. The 11 questions are here when you're talking about. We talk about Finance Commission and the state. It happens to take place in the overall context of the fiscal federal relations in the country. And we talk about, we take pride in the holding together federalism of India as compared to the coming together federalism of the US. And we need to ask, we take pride in our cooperative federal fiscal federalism. Now we need to ask about how it has evolved over time. And in fact, scholars of many of them have articulated that Indian fiscal federalism is at a crossroads.
Joseph, just 5 minutes more, please. Please wind up.
Only 5 minutes. Am I taken?
You've already taken 22 minutes.
35 I started, I suppose. Okay. Okay, then. It has. Okay, that's why I told you I'll talk only with the points, no power. When I added power, it happened. This PowerPoint is a problem. Okay. It has been argued that India is at a crossroads because of a whole lot of factors that include the liberal policy reforms which initiated in 1991 and how it has happened. I mean, I will only quote Joseph Stiglitz here or Danny Roderick here. Danny would argue that while a bad trade policy regime can ruin a country, a good trade policy cannot per se make a poor country rich. Or Stiglitz would say that any country which has liberalized and globalized at their terms and at their pace have had enormous benefits, but for others, it has been an unmitigated disaster. I am very sure our dear friend Ramakumar will articulate how India's opening up with ASEAN, with agriculture, WTO, how we have opened up in somebody else's terms and somebody else's pace without consulting the states, the national policy making decisions. I can go on. In fact, I was one of the persons who have been the leader of the India ASEAN Vision 2020 document, Vision 2020 document. And when India ASEAN economic India ASEAN what is called free trade agreement was formulated, this particular document approved by the MEA, to the best of my knowledge, was not seen by the Ministry of Commerce. I mean, this is the what which happens. Anyway, now coming to the other things like the constitutional amendments in the country that made the local self-government stronger. In that process, you have on the one hand, the union suppressing the states, taking away all the powers, and the states nibbling from the below. States get suppressed. And the FRBM Act, Fiscal Responsibility and Budget Management Act. My dear friends, if anybody is development economics, they know that as early as in 56, Richard Nelson articulated the idea of low-level equilibrium trap. A country is poor because its income is low income, low saving, low investment. If you have low income, low investment, you have no other way but to borrow or steal. State cannot steal. You have to borrow. And what we need in a developing economy is it fiscal responsibility and budget management or fiscal responsibility and borrowing management? You need to ensure that every money that you borrow is invested in such a way that the return from the borrowed money is higher than the rate of interest that you pay. That is what development-oriented public fiscal policy should be aiming at. It is not that India needs a fiscal responsibility and budget management, a borrowing management act. I don't know how long it will take for the fiscal policy experts, pundits, to get into this kind of. Now, coming to GST. What has happened to GST? In fact, our own honorable minister, while he was the finance minister, had a dissenting note saying that it will turn the states into begging position. And today, after 70 years of GST reform, we are nowhere. We are nowhere. Kerala's revenue depends upon how other states are efficient. A country, we have great expectations because being a consumer state, we thought that we will be benefiting enormously. But at the same time, today what we see, for every rupee that I collect by way of SGSD, what I get from IGST or interstate transfer of goods is 1.21 rupees. It should be at least 3 to 4 rupees. It is for a whole lot of, I don't want to elaborate on that. As a result of all this, what actually happened? The congenital inequality. By birth, there was an inequality between fiscal, by center and the union. That got aggravated, which was unequivocally and explicitly stated by the 15th Finance Commission when they said, in this country, the states account for over 62% of the expenditure, while their revenue entitlements is only 37%. What will they do? That this got, but I'm trying to say that this is what actually we are. Now, I think I must also talk about cooperative federalism for a minute. What is the cooperative federalism we are talking about? We are talking about cooperative federalism, cooperation between center and the union and the states. Here, one single individual initiative by Dr. Charan Singh is trying to bring states together to learn each other. We are a country wherein many innovative schemes were articulated, developed, and flourished in the states. Later, the union took it over. In this state, in this country, with such diversity, diverse competence, what policy instruments at the instance of Finance Commission or anyone you have cooperative federalism involving cooperation between states. We don't have one. But how long we'll have to wait for all these things? Now, okay, now coming to, okay, I can take my, you gave me 2 minutes, I'll take another 5 minutes and finish it up, okay. Okay, now coming to Kerala model. What is Kerala model? What is Kerala? Kerala model is nothing but, Kerala model is a model of export-oriented human capital production, my dear friends. Export-oriented human capital production. But when you're talking about a state in a confederation of states, in a system, you have to understand that each component's ability to contribute to its own development and the development of the other components and the union is different. Kerala's ability to contribute towards its development and neighbor other states' development and the union's development is different from that of another states. So this is because, if you analytically, if you argue, because each state gets specialized in certain activities according to, or which is shaped by historical factors, cultural factors, resource endowment factors, whole lot of factors. So I can divide Indian states for an analytical categorization to type 1 and type 2 states for here. Type 1 states are the states which are producing goods, saleable goods, tradable goods. These goods, when they produce goods, people who are employed in that, for example, when Mr. Balagopal's blood bag factory is established, he gives employment to people, state gets benefited. People of the state become rich. It goes to other states get benefited because blood bag, you get blood. And central government gets because he gives excise to central government for the industrial goods. This is a case of, for example, Maharashtra. Coming to state of Kerala, what was Kerala specializing in? Kerala was specializing in not in saleable goods. We have been specializing in export-oriented human capital production. This is Kerala model. Can you sell human capital? You cannot sell human capital. Human capital is mobile. And this human capital is mobile. Today, you have Malayalis in 183 out of 195 countries, and they contribute 23% of the total remittance to the country. The union benefits. Another 2 million Indians, Keralites, are working in other parts of the states. I was told that some of the leading IT companies, even 35% of the employees are Malayalis. They are doctors, they are nurses, they are teachers, they contribute to other states. We are not exporting labor, my dear friends. We are exporting human capital. In a world where knowledge is the most important resource of the modern economy, this human capital is embodying knowledge. It contributes to the development of other states. I want to ask you a question. In this country, if you are familiar with India's trade policy, I worked on trade. I prepared India IPSA. Okay, what I'm trying to say is that we have various direct and indirect incentives provided, subsidies provided by the union government for the promotion of what is called exported goods. Whether India's human capital, which earns 23% of our remittance, has been given any concessions, any subsidies? How it was facilitated? It was facilitated by the public action, the private-public participation, even before the union governments imagined it and appointed Dr. Kelkar as a committee. We implemented that. We were way ahead of other states. We implemented the public-private participation and government paid the salary. It was from the borrowed money. It was from the borrowed money. It was not from the Finance Commission grant. So what I'm trying to say is that Kerala model is a model that made the people of Kerala rich. You find one of my friends from Oslo came to Kottayam. KJ, how can you say you are poor country? By seeing the houses around. It made people of Kerala rich. It made the union better off. It made the union better off. It made other states better off. But it made the state pauper. because those states which are producing saleable goods, they get tax. But what Kerala produces, Kerala could not collect any tax, neither health nor education. You could not get any tax from the sector, and actually government, you paid for that. And what I'm trying to say that Kerala model is in a fiscal federal perspective. Kerala model is a model that made Kerala government pauper. So you have a state where state is pauper and people are rich. I will come back to the question. This is an endogenous point. So what I'm trying to say is that when you are talking about Kerala is indebted, what actually one should be articulating is how much union is indebted to Kerala for what it is upholding, its keeping its head high in the Committee of Nations. This is very important to articulate in a fiscal federal context, particularly when you are trying to become a developed economy by becoming a developed economy by 2047. So you cannot have a policy of providing basic minimum public goods. No, that is gone. That days is gone. You cannot think in terms of, I'm not against equity. What I'm trying to say is that Kerala needs to, or India needs to articulate a new paradigm if you really want to wish, if you are really serious about it. Otherwise, you can say about, say, for example, in G20, India coined a new term, what is called life for environment. It is an advice to the rest of the world. Who should be doing life for environment? States should be doing life for environment, not union. Has that been a matter of consideration by anyone so far? I never heard anybody talking about it. So there is no point in simple talks. If you mean what you talk, you have to act. So in that sense, we need to have the institution needs to co-evolve and adapt itself. And we have to think in terms of what is called, I think now, I'm just finishing with the 2 minutes. Okay, I'll stop here. I'll stop here. The point I'm trying to say is that ideally, what we need to do is we need to, when you see this thing in the fiscal federal context, quite a lot of Kerala's problems could be articulated in terms of the manner in which India's fiscal federalism operates. My dear friends, last one point, I'll finish it. Of course, I have another 10 more slides. I don't want out of the time. Point number which I want to say is that we are having a very faulty. My colleagues in the institute have prepared a major report which has been discussed last week, and we have found serious problem with all the indicators of the devolution. Income distance 45%, population 15%, area 15%. I can go on. What I'm trying to say, just take out income criteria. Why? Income criteria means that if your per capita income is low, you will get lower. If your per capita income is high, your devolution share will be less. What is the logic? Logic is simple. You are rich. Your people can pay the tax. So why don't you provide the public services by your own tax? It looks like a very, very harmless proposition. But what really happens? When Kerala was collecting 12% of the GSDP as tax, our share of service sector in the country state was only 41%. From 41%, today we are working about 65%. That increase in the share of GDP of the service sector, that power to tax service sector is not with the state, it is the central government. So your growing sector was not taxed. You don't have the power to tax your growing sector. Now you get a double whammy if your growing sector is also export oriented, service sector is export oriented. In fact, the lowest decline in the tax GDP ratio, if you go by this curve, you will find that in terms of upper income groups states, tax GDP ratio is declining. In the case of lower income group with high share, lower share in services, their tax GDP is increasing, and middle income group is almost stable. If you go by this plot, it shows the percentage change in the share of services in the GSDP and percentage in decline in your tax GDP ratio, a clean fit, negative clean fit. Karnataka was the state which has shown highest decline in the tax GSDP ratio because it is a software company, software oriented states, and it also meant for export. There are other factors we have to bring. But I'm trying to say that these are considerations to the best of our knowledge. So far, Finance Commission has not 45%. And this is a policy what we have is one of penalizing the performer. And our strategy is, if you are going a strategy of basic minimum public goods and reduce everyone to the minimum level, you will not reach 2047. My dear friends, I think I will stop here. I have a lot to say, lot to talk since the time is limited. Without PowerPoint, I would have been much more faster because this, I'm not very, yeah, there's so much to go. See, there are a lot of things about, for example, if you're talking about, when you talk about population, Kerala's disadvantages. About per capita income, we are disadvantages. About area, what is area? Area means your disadvantage because your large state have got disadvantage. Cost of providing public goods is high in larger states. In Kerala, a kilometer of national highway costs 100 crore. All India average is 30. So when you are talking about high area, smaller states, particularly the high density and land cost also have disadvantage. We should take into account of that. So what I'm trying to say that this, when you are coming about the devolution, we will find that unconditional grants are actually declining. Conditional grants are increasing, particularly referring to this particularly referring to centrally sponsored schemes. Now, what an unacceptable proposition. You have got flood relief for Kerala and also for Rajasthan. Why should Rajasthan need flood relief? And how long do you need a Kautilya to come and advise you on all these basic
Joseph,
matters?
can we wind up, please?
So I'm stopping here because I can go on. The fact of the case is that I will stop here. What I need to say is that Indian institutions in a world wherein globally institutions are recognized for their role. Indian institutions cannot be myopic and static. They need to co-evolve. If they co-evolve, and according to the changing needs of time, I'm very sure Kerala will be the beneficiary of that. Otherwise, we need to have at least I would like to say that India needs to have a working on 2 lakh strategy of while laggards, but only carrots. But how long will you follow? You need a policy of carrot and stick. How long will you continue with the carrot? And we need to be sensitive to the needs of time. I will stop at those points. Thank you very much. I think I tested all your patience.
Exactly.
So, thank you for bearing with me. Thank
yes,
you
did test the patience, but you have certainly, I can understand, because as director of the Institute of Finance and Taxation, you really can understand the pains of that. While Kerala has achieved quite significantly, it is also suffering on the financial front. That I can certainly understand. That I think we'll reserve the questions for the last. People can put the questions in the chat box as well as ask at the last time. But we would also like to hear the other experts' opinion. So over to you, Professor Ramakumar.
Thank you. The chair, Dr. Padmanabhan, other distinguished panel members and audience here. Thank you very much for inviting me to this very interesting discussion. I'm supposed to be speaking on the question of agriculture, followed by Mr. Balagopal, who is likely to speak on industry. So let me start sharing my slides because can you see my slides?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yeah. Model and the way in which the incomes have moved over a period of time, probably making the old discussion on the model irrelevant in some sense. Let me begin with a statement that it is very likely that Kerala will be one of the first states in India that is likely to be an upper middle income country, according to the World Bank classification. There is actually a race to the top here. So in 2022, India as a country was at the lower end of the lower middle income countries with a per capita gross national income of $2,390 according to the Atlas method. But if Kerala were a country, its per capita GSDP was about $3,873, very close to the upper end of the lower middle income countries, which means that with an average level of growth rate by 2026, Kerala would be classified, if it were a country, as a higher middle income economy according to the World Bank classification. It is likely to be one of the few states in India to have that distinction. Kerala also ranks, at any rate, any year in the last 10 or 20 years, according to the National Sample Survey estimates, it ranks first in terms of the rural per capita expenditure. If you look at the situation assessment survey of agricultural households according to the National Sample Survey, you will see that the average real inflation adjusted monthly income of agricultural households was higher in Kerala, close to double the average real monthly income for agricultural households in India of rupees 7,427. In Kerala, it was rupees 13,021. So all these numbers essentially show that the discussion on Kerala can no more be conducted in the precincts of the old way in which we used to talk about Kerala's development experience. Kerala is actually a high growth state. It has one of the highest per capita incomes and per capita consumption expenditures in India, including in rural areas. And it is very likely to be one of the first states in India to achieve a distinguished status of upper middle income country in about 2 or 3 years' time. This, however, takes me directly into the discussion that we are having. Kerala's agricultural economy. Let me say that Kerala's agricultural economy, in this whole high growth scenario that we have in the state as a whole, in the state's economy as a whole, agriculture appears to be a little bit of a sad story. And that sad story is because of a number of historical and contemporary reasons. What are the historical and contemporary reasons that I'm referring to? I shall, in this slide, provide you with a list of issues that I've classified into 3: structural issues, technical issues, and socio-economic issues. These are, in some sense, achievements of the state's rural economy or agricultural economy, but over a period of time, some of these achievements or successes have turned out to be constraints or weaknesses also. So in that sense, these issues need some kind of urgent redressal, as we can see very clearly. You can see the kind of structural issues that we have in the state's agricultural economy. We have a high share of non-agricultural area, which is the share of net sown area in the total geographical area is small, and it is also shrinking over a period of time, which over a period of time has meant that the importance of agricultural production, that is the productive sector of agriculture in the whole economy, has become weakened. So people hold land no more as a productive resource in the state, but more as a speculative asset, particularly because of the remittance monies and higher per capita incomes, etc. You have land prices going up. And so basically people keep land or transact land, not in terms of it as a productive resource, but it being a speculative asset. Now that has serious implications for the way in which production decisions are made, investment decisions are made, investment incentives are formatted, etc. There is also a serious problem, which is also one of its advantage, the predominance of commercial crops: tea, coffee, rubber, spices, condiments, etc. These are the crops that take Kerala's agricultural income at an absolute level to one of the highest in India. But at the same time, a sad feature of this same story is that the prices or the markets vis-a-vis these commodities, these commercial crops, are not in the policy domain of the state government at all. Professor Joseph was a little while back mentioning the case of free trade treaties we signed, WTO onwards, on through the ASEAN treaty and so on. It is these treaties that the central government signs with no reference to or no discussion with the state governments that essentially determine the incentives or the scope of these commercial crop sectors in states in Kerala. Because of that, Kerala is a sufferer in some sense of the volatilities vis-a-vis these prices in the international market. These are largely crops which are exported out. They fetch at an absolute level higher incomes for farmers, but these volatilities are also at times very dangerous and very adverse to the state's economy, and the state has no policy freedom or degrees of freedom of any sense to sort of control what is happening in these crops. There is also a predominance of small and marginal farms, which is an outcome of Kerala's historic land reform, which is an advantage in many ways because it has been the centerpiece of its social and economic progress over the years. But also what has happened over the years, however, is that there has been fragmentation of land. This fragmentation of land has also meant fragmentation of produce at the other end, which means that it is very difficult today, given the nature of agrarian structure in Kerala, to offer a stable market or a remunerative price based on economies of scale for a Kerala farmer. Some of these have become constraints over a period also. There are also technical issues which are essentially of a scientific variety. Yield gaps in agriculture are very high. Kerala's agriculture has one of the lowest productivities among all states in India, while the reality is that in India itself, the averages are much lower than achievable international standards. There are problems of poor soil management. Consumption per hectare of fertilizers is very low. We have a poor spread of irrigation, particularly because we have had over the years 2 monsoons which provide some amount of water, but we have not been able to convert that into higher irrigation potential in agriculture. And more recently, we have had natural disasters, different climate variabilities coming in, causing different shocks to the agricultural economy. Then we have a set of socio-economic issues where the share of the so-called full-time farmers in the state's workforce, agricultural workforce, is actually very low. We have a predominance, in fact, of what are called as part-time agriculturists or farmers who essentially are not absentee landlords or absentee landowners in any form, but they are actually very much present landlords. They're present in the house, in the field, and so on, but their main occupation is outside agriculture. Their main source of income lies outside agriculture. As a result, they are mostly weekend farmers. And the amount of care, time spent, the investment put into agriculture, etc., are all adversely affected because of this socioeconomic feature, which means that there is a high share of non-agricultural rural workers, which in turn create sort of a shortage of agricultural laborers, particularly during the peak seasons. And none of this is ameliorated in some sense by the presence of agricultural mechanization in any form. Most of the agricultural operations are continuing to be manual in nature. So this essentially means that Kerala has a set of historically evolved features in its agriculture, which are at times an advantage, but at times also its serious or acute disadvantage also. We have to live with this complex matrix of issues that Kerala has, and the effort has to be to sort of address them one by one, address them step by step. But at the same time, what I would like to say in a while is that none of the fortunes in Kerala's agricultural economy are decided by anyone in Kerala, or for that matter, anyone in the nearby states. It's decided by the Ministry of Commerce, its free trade treaties, its arrangements of trade with respect to commodities with other countries. And most of these decisions have been adverse to the Kerala context over the years. In Kerala, in the main time, three features of agricultural production. The questions of irrigation, as production. and its growth in Kerala, I would like to begin with this very rather sad story, which is the compound annual growth rate of agricultural GVA and GDP for a 15-year period between 2005-6 and 2021-22. There is only one state in India which has had a negative growth rate of agricultural GVA and GDP in this 15-year period, and that happens to be Kerala. So you can see that during this time, Kerala's overall per capita income and growth rate were probably increasing, but its agriculture was on a negative growth rate. And that is primarily because this period coincided, at least the later part of this period, coincided with two important factors. One is a precipitous fall in global commodity prices after the global financial crisis of 2007-8, which sort of stifled the profit profiles of farmers in India, particularly in cash crops like tea, coffee, rubber, cardamom, etc. The second is that during this period, Kerala was also repeatedly visited by a few natural disasters. The flood of 2018, the high monsoon of 2019, then came COVID. So all these came together in some form to create a set of adverse circumstances for growth in Kerala's agricultural economy, which meant that you have this status of being the only state which has had a negative growth rate over this 15-year period in India. But at the same time, while this is true, from about 2016 onwards, we have made concerted efforts to come out of this conundrum in multiple ways. There is evidence now that after a long period of decline of value of output in agriculture till about 2019-20, we now have a period of revival of agricultural growth in the last 4 years, particularly after 2019-20. Now, again, this brings me back to the point about degrees of freedom that I made. Why has this revival primarily taken place? This revival has primarily taken place because with the onset of COVID, there has been a revival of global commodity prices. And it is this revival of global commodity prices that has had a positive spillover effect into Kerala's agricultural economy, leading to its value of output increasing rather sharply over the last 4 years. But the flip side is that we still are below the levels of 2011-12 or 2012-13, which we hope to achieve in about 2 years' time from now, from where another period of high growth must begin. But that would again depend on whether commodity prices remain favorable or not. While this is indeed the overall macro scenario that we have in agriculture, a story of decline and then a story of revival in the last 3 or 4 years, there are some persistent issues that are there with Kerala's agriculture, which it shares with India as a whole as well. And one of them in agricultural production is the presence of low productivity in agriculture. At the planning board, we have put together some numbers with respect to the yield gaps for different crops in agriculture. In our view, in many of the major crops of Kerala, the average levels of productivity in the state can actually be either doubled or even tripled in some cases. And we already have farmers within the state in certain districts who have achieved that kind of productivity. And this focus on increasing agricultural productivity and thus agricultural production remains one of the important policy challenges that we have in the state. And I would venture out to say that this would be possible only if prices remain favorable. So the shift of prices from adverse to favorable in the last few years must continue for a rather extended period of time if we have to create a positive ecosystem for farmers to invest in agriculture and increase productivity. But the data is out there for you to make a judgment on that independently as well. The other problems that we have, which are constraints to increasing agricultural productivity, is irrigation. The share of net irrigated area in the state remains very low. And over a period of time, there have been investments made in irrigation projects and so on, but they have not been completed on time. We also have had much less emphasis on watershed-based irrigation projects, as a result of which what we have is that the percentage of net sown area which is irrigated has remained stubbornly at about just 20% over the last 10 years or so. More problematic is the fact that if you take the total net irrigated area in terms of hectares, there appears to be even a small fall over the years in the last 10 years. It may be because some of the best irrigated areas are diverted out of agriculture to real estate or other purposes outside agriculture. But the fact remains that our net irrigated area in absolute terms is on a decline. The soil in Kerala remains very poorly endowed in nutrients, which is another important constraint in increasing productivity. We have high percentage of our soils which are acidic, and we have a significant proportion of soils which are deficient in available nutrients. You can see that close to 1/3 of the soils are deficient in the major nutrients, and more than 50% of the soils are deficient in micronutrients. We also have a serious problem of the drain of organic carbon from the soil, which is an outcome of the floods, heavy rains, etc., which have adversely affected soil health. And in this, so we need, in some sense, a situation where we take care of soil and its nutrition much more carefully and scientifically in terms of management over the years. One of the issues that remains is fertilizer use. If you will see the consumption of fertilizers, NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potash per hectare, kilograms per hectare in Kerala, is one of the lowest in India. It's just about 64 kilograms per hectare, whereas the top state, Telangana, is over about 300 kilograms per hectare. So this is a serious problem with respect to soil management and the challenge of raising agricultural productivity. And in this context, a lot of people talk about natural farming, organic farming, and so on. I mean, my own personal view has been that none of these are scientifically validated alternatives in agriculture, and the key issue, some of them relate this problem to that of climate change, but what is completely ignored is the fact that if you consider what is called as the AFOLU sector, agriculture, forestry, and land use in Kerala, which is basically the LULUC sector, land use change and forestry plus agriculture, which gives you a net in terms of AFOLU. Kerala is actually a huge net sink of carbon, of GHG, greenhouse gases in India. There is no state in Kerala which is a higher net or a larger net sink of greenhouse gases than Kerala's AFOLU sector is. So in this kind of a situation, the sort of goal of sort of achieving net zero, etc., in agriculture is an absolute non-starter. We need to look at more energy use in agriculture to increase productivity in agriculture, which includes applying more fertilizers per hectare in the soil. This takes me to the second which is related to questions like production, but it be visited by price falls at the level and by raising agricultural productivity. This is one important problem. The second important problem that I think is as important as the first, which is if you remember, I had mentioned in the first slide that one of the problems, structural issues in Kerala's agriculture is the small size of its farms. The huge predominance, much more than other states of India, of small and marginal farmers. This fragmentation of land holdings and production leads to a lower marketed surplus per farmer, which is also an outcome of the low productivity of land. This also means that a certain minimum scale becomes essential in terms of ensuring a stable market and a remunerative price for the farm. This idea of scale has been completely sort of ignored in the Kerala's policy domain over a period of time in agriculture. So the whole question that we are grappling with in Kerala today is, how can we create this scale? Now, on the one hand, scale can be created by giving away land to corporates, but that's not what the history of Kerala's development would teach you. In Kerala, the effort must be and has to be, and it is currently, to collectivize production, not in terms of creating collectives and so on, in terms of the old Soviet model and so on, but in terms of creating scale at the farm gate by pooling together different activities or production in multiple ways. That is the effort that is happening today in terms of creating possibilities of scale and aggregation. Here, Kerala has enormous strengths from history. It has a rich history of the cooperative movement. Its cooperative societies and banks are one of the strongest and the richest in India, which provides them with an excellent platform in order to sort of offer possibilities of aggregation on the ground. We also have the presence of empowered local self-governments, panchayats, which play a very important role in local agricultural and economic activities. We also have a large network of farmer producer companies, as have other states. But more importantly, we also have women-centered Kudumbashri groups, which as of now, they cultivate close to 65,000 acres of land on a collective basis as joint liability groups in Kerala, which is an excellent platform to create scale and aggregation on the ground. So Kerala has these strengths, and these strengths must be utilized in order to create the scope for higher scale in production. Yet another way to create scale in production is
Excuse me, Professor Ramakumar, another 2-3 minutes.
I have 3 minutes. Yes.
Okay, fine. Perfect.
Yeah. Legalizing land leasing is one important way of doing this. And here we need to look at different alternatives to make sure that within the protection offered by land reform laws, you have situations where landowners are ready to lease out land to those who are landless, to joint liability groups, etc. And this is yet another way of creating scale. And I do offer some kind of structures which can be used for an aggregated agricultural market structure. My primary argument here is that currently, which is on the left side, you will see now, you have the first mile aggregators after farmers. They are mostly traders or commission agents. And there is very little linkage to the agricultural processor. And if at all that is happening, that is from the second or third mile aggregator at the wholesale level. This is the problem of aggregation that I'm talking about. I'm trying to sort of invert this flowchart on the right side, where what can be is shown, where I try to put what are called as PRAMs, primary rural agricultural markets, which are under the ownership and regulation and control of primary agricultural cooperative societies at the first mile aggregation level, or even Kudumbashri groups or farmer producer companies, which creates a much better linkage with the agricultural processor and the processing retailer compared to what it is now. So we need efforts in Kerala to create these first mile aggregators using the strengths of the development experience of Kerala at some level. And that is the second important challenge that I would say is there in Kerala's agriculture. Now, the third important challenge edition. And if you look at the annual survey of industries, which is there, if you see the data from the annual survey of industries, you will see that Kerala has a high presence of number of factories which are involved in food processing. And there are close to 2,500 to 3,000 factories where more than 10 people are employed as per ASI definitions, where they are engaged in manufacture of food, rubber products, tobacco products, medicinal products, etc. And this is something that needs to be scaled up over the years. And these numbers are hardly sufficient at this point to create forward linkages in the agricultural economy. When I look at the gross value of output, interestingly, you will see that the manufacture of miscellaneous food products, if I just take the manufacture of food products, you will see that one of the growing sectors is actually the second row that you will see, which is processing and preserving of fish. Fish processing is actually a really growing agricultural processing sector in the state, followed by some of the other minor products. But this is appearing very clearly to be the fastest growing sector, and followed by a manufacture of miscellaneous food products of different types. So what is the issue that I'm talking about here? The most important prerequisites to attract investment, one is the availability of aggregated raw materials in scale, which is currently lacking. And if we have the mechanisms to create scale that I mentioned a little while back, this issue can be addressed in some form. We also need, alongside, facilities of grading, assaying, quality meeting different quality parameters, etc., which we must ensure in order to create possibilities of attracting more investment. We also need ease of investment and doing business, particularly in agribusiness in the state. We need a large number of legal reforms. We have done a set of legal reforms in terms of creating larger dairy farms in the last few months, but we need a set of legal reforms. I'll give you an example of how to rescue what is called as NIDA, which is a product of coconut water after fermentation, which has very high levels of possibilities of being offered as an agricultural processed commodity, given the predominance of coconuts in the state. There we have a large number of legal constraints in terms of they being tied up in excise laws as opposed to industrial or agricultural laws. So those ease of investments have to be ensured in order to bring this investment. We also need a better legal environment, and we also need a presence of large numbers of investment sites, food parks, industrial parks, etc., with adequate infrastructure and other facilities. And this is the last point that I want to get into, the last bullet point. If you will actually see, you will see these are the industrial parks in Kerala today, which are operated by what is called as a KINFRA. We have large number of food processing units in different, the number of units at the end are actually food processing units within these industrial parks. A large number of them have come out in the last 6 or 7 years. And this has been, this sector, food processing sector, number of enterprises here has seen a tremendous rate of growth in the last few years, particularly the 6 or 7 years prior to this time that we are talking. We also have specific food parks. And what is interesting is that most of these food parks currently are full in capacity. There is no more space to be given. Only very little space is remaining in some of these food parks to be leased out. In other words, we need a large number of new food parks to come up in different parts of the state. And given the investment constraints, the Industries Department has now said that we are ready to start industrial parks on a public-private partnership model, which will actually create larger number of such capacities of processing and industry in the state. And most of these, as you can see, are also in fish processing. You will also see a large number of crop-specific parks coming up, which are ongoing. We have a spices park coming up. We have integrated rice technology parks coming up, coconut park, coffee park, and rubber companies coming up. So these are all different initiatives that are happening currently in the field of agricultural value addition and processing, which needs significant scaling up. So this is my last slide. I'm just summarizing whatever I said into these 3 boxes, where I spoke about raising production and productivity, expanding or enhancing aggregation and marketing, and increasing investments in value addition. I think there are common threads that run through 1, 2, and 3 very clearly. I don't think focusing on just the last box will be the solution anywhere. We need to start from institutions that help in raising agricultural production and productivity, as well as create scale and aggregation at the farm gate. We need better markets, better grading centers, and so on, which will have to be facilitated by different collective action groups within state, including cooperatives, and leading up to private investment, including from the corporate sector, in value addition in the parks that we are speaking about. Unless these 3 are taken care of, it is unlikely that we will see a revival. But let me reiterate a sentence and take leave of you, which is that all of this is possible, but it needs 2 things. One is enough fiscal space for the government in order to spend and invest in these sectors. And these issues related to state finances that Dr. Joseph spoke about have come in as a very serious constraint, which has really shrunk the fiscal space of Kerala government over the last few years, and which is one important problem. The second important problem or constraint is that of agricultural prices. All this can happen, experience shows, only if global commodity prices remain favorable, and that is not in the hands of the government of Kerala, purely in the hands of the Ministry of Commerce, and not even the Ministry of Agriculture at the Government of India level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ramakumar. You have highlighted the issues as well as given a positive path ahead of what could be what Kerala could achieve in the future. So thank you. Now over to Professor Dr. Balagopal on his views on industry.
Thank you, Dr. Nirmala. May I request Vivek to put up the first slide? Yeah. So, the purpose of me using this this rather dramatic just a minute. Yeah, this rather dramatic opening slide is, to say reimagining industrial Kerala, is that in many talks which I give, which I'm invited to give to industry bodies and entrepreneurs across the state, I find that one of the things which holds back the discourse is the framework from which the whole discussion happens, which is about all the negatives, about and most of them are perceptional issues with very little respect for actual data. So it is all about some antediluvian labor practices which are followed by the headload workers and so on. And so to change the perspective, I have recently resorted to this of trying to make the people in the audience look at the future going from the present and not dwelling too much on the past. Of course, I don't need that here because I am addressing a body of professional economists mostly, and academically very well trained economists. So who are also, I'm sure, more conversant with the data even about Kerala and industrial Kerala than I am. Because I must confess that in the last several years, accessing reasonably reliable data and which enables me to do any kind of analysis has been a challenge, particularly because of the fact that I was preoccupied with business and other things. So, one or two opening points. Nowhere has I think Professor Charan Singh and others would probably guess that nowhere has the Kerala model been so vigorously debated as in Kerala itself. This is hardly a subject which I'm sure is occupying too much attention, or people are losing not much sleep over it outside Kerala, but inside Kerala, there's a vigorous and often acrimonious debate going on, which I think is probably the most lurid version of the argumentative Indian that Amartya Sen so famously wrote about. And the industrial backwardness, I would say in inverted commas, of Kerala is held up as an example of the consequences of and failure of the Kerala model. And data over the past 30 years, however, suggests that not only has the deindustrialization of Kerala that was predicted to happen in the 90s, not only has that not happened, but actually manufacturing has started to grow. But what is more interesting is it is the transformation in the manufacturing sector that has also happened in this ensuing period of 20 years, where here I unfortunately will not be able to present too much data, but I'm sure this data is readily available, but I will point to it in my next few words. So for manufacturing in Kerala was, apart from a belt of chemical industries in the Adayar area near Cochin, which were brought there specifically by concessional power tariff, which was given to them in the early years after independence. Other than that belt, most of the manufacturing was primary processing of locally available agricultural raw materials like cashew, coir, and then also seafood, which was just very preliminary cleaning of seafood and then freezing it and shipping it. Or in the case of spices processing, it was just cleaning and packing into sacks and shipping for export. This constituted, in terms of both value as well as in terms of employment, the lion's share of manufacturing in sector in Kerala. Now, due to various factors into which I will not go at the present moment, due to the rise of wages in the 70s and 80s, these manufacturing sectors which were primary manufacturing processes involving large numbers of manual workers and low automation and low use of power, they found naturally this to be uneconomical, and the industry started to migrate to neighboring Tamil Nadu mostly, and cashew and coir mostly migrated across the border to neighboring Tamil Nadu. The same also happened for this bulk processing of seafoods. So what actually happened during this phase was a significant decline in manufacturing output, and consequently and the impact on manufacturing wages and manufacturing employment, which was a very huge blow for the Kerala economy. And it is not a coincidence that this phase also saw the slowest phase, in fact, the stagnation of the Kerala economy up to the mid and late 1980s. So, in this brief talk, what I will try to do is actually not provide too many answers, but raise some questions which will have interesting public policy implications. Based on my experience, both as an entrepreneur for 25 years, building a manufacturing startup to global scale in Kerala. During that time, I observed the behavior of others like me, who all started small with little capital or business experience and went on to build companies that eventually made a mark at the national level and at the global level. This obviously conflicted with the perception, my own experience as well as the experience of the companies I was observing, that this conflicted with the perception that Kerala is not business friendly, which after all grew up during a time when large number of factories, cashew factories were closing, coir factories were closing, workers were protesting against those closures. So what was the cause and what was the effect was often lost sight of in the media coverage of all those events of those days. So it was the threat of militant labor was driving the industries out of Kerala, etc., which created a picture which was not actually, so it created this perception that here we are talking about a state which is not good for industry. Can I have the next slide, please? Vivek, yeah. So here, what I thought is just as something to provoke at least thought and attention, attract attention. I took the former chief economic advisor Subramaniam's, K. Venkata Subramaniam's recent book. I haven't read it. I just read a review of it, which was India at 100, where he has done some projections and even in the YouTube discussion which I heard of his, where he talks about his explanation for all these numbers, and in very quantitative terms he describes this whole thing. So I'm not getting into the quantitative versus qualitative dimension here. What is interesting is some of the numbers which he threw up, and that set me thinking. I'm not, please don't bother about these numbers. Can I have the next slide, please? I noticed that from the GSDP data of Kerala GSDP during the period 2000 to 2020 to 2022, the GSDP of Kerala has been doubling roughly every 8 years throughout this 22-23 year period. So since in 2023-24, it is about, I'm roughly rounding it off in US dollars, it was about 11 lakh crores. So it was rounded off, it comes to around 140 billion US dollars, which means if that is the figure in 2024, then the projected GSDP 8 years down the line, 8 or 9 years down the line, will be $280 billion. So this effectively represents one more Kerala is going to happen in the next 9 years by 2023. And I was just wondering, I use this presentation to try to provoke the entrepreneurs and MSME representatives who had filled one of the rooms where I was talking, when they were all sitting there and probably thinking in terms of what can government do for them, I wanted to tell them that this 140 billion has not happened because of anything government did. This is what the economy did. And this is because even government share of this 140 billion GSDP, I don't know what the exact figures here are in India, but I know it's less than 20%. So what we need to see is what are the opportunities emerging. So that was the reason why I used this set of slides. Can I have the next slide, please, Vivek? So, as I mentioned, during these are well-known facts about Kerala. I'm just going through it again. During the period up to the mid to late 1980s, Kerala's economy was sort of relatively stagnant. The CAGR during this entire period was about 1.12%. Now, post say towards the end of the 1980s, and I don't want to try to establish any connection between the so-called reforms of 1991 and whatever happened in Kerala, but after this after the late 1980s, there was a dramatic transformation, and economic activity in Kerala picked up. And the key growth drivers have been identified by various scholarly papers, including one excellent one by late Professor K.K. George, who found that the key growth drivers were the construction sector, transport and communications, hospitality, real estate, and business services. Can I have the next slide, please? Now, post 1990s, what has happened is I observed the emergence of high-tech manufacturing enterprises, all set up by local entrepreneurs, and all of which started small with 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs investment, started by, as I said, first-time entrepreneurs, often from agricultural and trading families with no industrial background, and who then grew these to scale. And I have listed 50 such companies in my book. And now what is very interesting is I have another list of 50 more companies, because many people have been sending me emails after reading reviews of my book saying you miss this company and you miss that company, etc. So I am now adding to that list. The point is, these companies include success stories such as the world's largest spice oleoresin maker with a global market share of 30%. For one Indian company to have a global market share of 30% is something incredible. Then a company in Kerala which is the leader in the country in vitro diagnostics manufacture, diagnostic test kit manufacture, the largest blood bag manufacturer in India and one of the largest manufacturers in the world, a high-tech electronics exporter who, if we set aside the Wistrons and the Foxconns, which are mostly importing components and semi-assembled parts from China and putting them into cartons and calling that manufacturing, if we don't call that manufacturing, and if we say manufacturing is what we commonly understand by manufacturing, then India's largest electronics hardware exporter is located in Kakinad export zone in Kerala, and it's a company called SF4 Technologies, which manufactures from scratch to finished product and ships to the final user high-end imaging equipment for Philips of Holland and GE of the US. So these are success stories. All these companies grew small. Started small, grew organically, were started by local entrepreneurs. They rely on high-tech manufacturing methods. They manufacture value-added products, and they cater to both domestic and international markets. Can I have the next slide, please? So today, I just looked at Wikipedia to get this kind of breakup to see what is current. I got this figure, but I noticed from another figure which I got that the sectoral breakup is slightly different. Services here are shown as 62%. Industry actually is shown as higher figure than this, close to 30%, and agriculture is 10% or less. Now, several factors have been identified as what could be the reason for the success of manufacturing and economic. What are the positives of Kerala? they include a strategic coastal location. Now, this is very interesting. At the time of independence, and for the first 20 to 30 or 30 years or more, when India was largely a closed economy, at that time, Kerala's location was a great disadvantage. It was at one end of a very large country where all the supply chains were very far away. All the transportation lines were very long. And at that time, you must remember, we didn't have GST, so we had all these interstate sales taxes and several checkposts, etc. So Kerala was at a terrible disadvantage there. Now, once the globalization happened after 1991 and the opening up of the economy happened, this geographical isolation of the state was transformed into, we found ourselves on the major sea lanes, we found ourselves on the major air lanes, and we even found that the major international data cable landings were at Cochin. So suddenly, from being at one end of a very large subcontinent, we were no longer at a periphery, we were in the center. And the various studies have also shown, including Government of India studies, which have rated Kerala very high in infrastructure in terms of road connectivity and communications facilities, etc. Then the high HDI and social stability are well known. Then global diaspora connections are a tremendous business advantage which Kerala has yet to leverage fully. Digital connectivity hub with the cables carrying 70% of India's data traffic have their landings at Cochin. Can I have the next slide, please? So this slide is not very important. So I just want to, this is more actually probably to be addressed to the Kerala, audiences. So here, my effort is to actually to try to say that, it is very clear that manufacturing has picked up after the 1990s. The data shows that from falling below 10% of GSDP, in fact, it fell to, I think, around 7% in the early 1990s. That has not only the fall has been arrested, but it has started to slowly climb up, and today is over 10%. There are differences about the what the actual figures are, but it is anyway over 10%, probably between 11 and 12%. Now, what was 10% of a $30 billion economy in 1990, and what is 10, 11 or 12% of a $140 billion economy in 2020? It means that a significant amount of manufacturing value addition is happening in the state today. And when you consider that we have to discount that all the traditional raw material processing, local agricultural raw material processing has significantly declined, though in some cases like spices it is still there. While there has been a significant decline, it means that modern manufacturing has really picked up. So the questions I think which we need to answer, which will help in policy making, are why did the deindustrialization really not happen? How was it arrested? Second is, what factors enabled these MSMEs to grow into successes? Now, please remember, for example, if you take the example of Punjab, I listened with great interest to one of the earlier EGROW seminars for using one of the links, and there was a lady who made a presentation on the MSME sector in Punjab. In Punjab, there were one or two clusters. One was a sports good cluster, and the other was a textiles cluster. Now, bicycle manufacturing cluster. Now, the sports week in Kerala, what is interesting is all these 50 companies which I studied, very few of them actually have many common features with each other. Mine was a high-tech biomedical device manufacturing company. Synthite was a advanced spice extraction oleoresin manufacturing company. Agape Diagnostics is a in vitro diagnostic test kit manufacturing company. PK Steels is a specialty steel casting company. Vajra Rubber is a rubber products manufacturing company, manufacturing rubber for naval vessels, including stealth submarines and stealth warships. Now, none of these have had any things to benefit from a cluster which was already existing. So why did they come there? I think so. These are questions which need answering. But now going forward for the Kerala government, one of the very clear public policy recommendations which I would make is to build clusters around these success stories, because some of the natural clusters have already happened. I'll end with just one point. One cluster which is already developing around Trivandrum is a medical device manufacturing cluster. My company was the pioneer in that. Then you have Hindustan, what was earlier called Hindustan Latex, which is a central public sector undertaking, which is now called HLL Lifecare, which manufactures birth control prophylactics and other products, as well as blood bags and other biomedical devices. And there's a third one there, which is called TTK Heart Valve Manufacturing Facility. Now, there is a life sciences park which is coming up by the government of Kerala, which is in the suburbs of Trivandrum, where special facilities and common facilities, etc., are being provided. It's a very good step in the right direction. They have set up an organization called Kerala Medical Technology Consortium. Now, this is something which I think not only for the Kerala government, but what is necessary is to gather all the knowledge in a particular field. These things do not happen serendipitously. So either an educational institution must be nominated to take the lead and become the nodal agency for it, like an IIT or an engineering college or a good STEM sciences college, or some entity like that. So in Kerala now, the figures show that 7% of the total medical devices registered in the country, which is about 950 or so, only 7% of them are located in Kerala, which is around 65 companies, 65 manufacturers. But these 7% of the companies produce 20% of the output of the medical devices sector, which means most of them have graduated to the SME stage and are successful. And it's not surprising when you look at why they are successful, is most of them are engaged in export, which means they manufacture to higher levels of quality standards than the medical device companies in the rest of India. Now, this cluster effect is already beginning to have a draw effect and attract more medical device companies from other parts, and entrepreneurs and startups and innovators to come there. Because for that ecosystem, you need not only a few manufacturers, but you also need an institution like the Government of India, Sri Chitra Tirunal Institute for Medical Science and Technology, which has got these biomedical technology capabilities. You also need something like CDAC, which will give the electronics and instrumentation, electronics knowledge and input, as well as the testing facilities which are given by ERTL. So there is a cluster developing there. So I think one of the lessons for Kerala and for all other states is this. The last word on this, which I want to say, is the Kerala government has announced, and very correctly so, that they're going to focus on knowledge-based industries. See, I hear often, in fact, after taking over recently as chairman of the KSIDC, I've been getting a lot of unsolicited mail and a lot of advice on what to do in my new responsibility, which is, like somebody said, is going to be a crown of thorns. But all the same, when I sort of looked at it, and because what they were saying is, when you have an industrial powerhouse like Tamil Nadu as your neighbor, we are going to be at a disadvantage. So the whole point here is, I don't think we should try to do what Tamil Nadu is doing. I don't think we can do what Tamil Nadu is doing. We simply don't even have 10 acres of land to give to an industrial enterprise. And where are we going to be able to attract an automobile manufacturing company or a large sheet glass manufacturing company or a tire manufacturing company, etc., which require land in tens of hundreds of acres, and that too with a proximity to a port? That simply will not happen. So there are other options. The government of Kerala is thinking of various options, what to do in a land scarce state, where of the classical factors of production, one of the factors which you simply cannot produce any more of is land. You can get more capital, and you can even get more labor in terms of, you can try to work on the productivity. But what do you do with land, which you have such a severe constraint? Solutions have to be found. There are solutions which are possible, but we should not do business as usual. So I will end by saying that I think the message here is that in the case, for instance, my immediate predecessor, speaker, Dr. Ramakumar, spoke about the manufacturing sector in Kerala's processing capacity for processing agricultural raw materials was not growing and keeping pace with or providing a sufficiently strong draw. That, I am afraid, is because there is a structural transformation taking place. They are moving away from low value adding to high value adding. Now, unless high value adding products can be identified for using these raw materials to produce much higher value added products, which will have more stable markets, which are not prone to global commodity price variations, we will not find people coming into those sectors. And instead, we will find people still going after many other sectors in the knowledge economy, which are opening up. So these are some thoughts, probably not too very well organized, I admit, but which I hope will provoke some thought and some questions, and also stimulate thinking in terms of what public policy can do to promote industrialization and manufacturing sector in the different states of India. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. You have beautifully highlighted how a land-scarce state like Kerala, what kind of strategy we should follow, and how we have over time moved from a low value addition agriculture-based product manufacturing to high value addition, and linked perfectly to what Ramakumar was also saying, that we also need to, that's one solution. Then we will not have to depend on international prices of raw materials if we go in for high value addition in agriculture. Also very happy to hear that this kind of strategy is one possible. So I think we are much ahead of time. So I think the floor is open to a few questions. Sharon, just few critical questions, and then after such an
Sure. I leave it to you. If there are some very good questions, I think the three speakers and you have done an excellent job. But if there are questions, absolutely welcome. Please take them.
If there are any questions, please, very briefly. I think we have more or less covered comprehensively. Yeah, please.
Sir, myself, Dr. D.B. Jani from Government Engineering College, Dahod, Gujarat. So I wanted to know the role of banana agriculture, impact over to the agricultural earning for the Kerala farmers.
Ramakumar, I think that is addressed to you.
Banana as well as the coconut. Two are the main crucial products for the Kerala agriculture. So how it can impact the earning of farmers?
Should I go for it now or later? Yeah. Okay. Well, yes, you're absolutely right. Banana and then added coconut later. In both, banana is actually the fastest growing fruit crop in Kerala. In fact, faster than pineapple, which is another important fastest growing fruit crop. In fact, there is a place near Kochi, which is slowly getting known as the pineapple capital of the southern part of India. And banana is actually growing in terms of area, production, and banana is also one of the few crops in Kerala where levels of productivity are not very low, as is the case with some other crops. But the problem here has been that most of the banana that is produced in Kerala is not getting into value addition, except in low value chips that we usually eat as Kerala banana chips. That kind of value addition is yet to happen. There is enormous scope for it. A large, if you compare it, if you compare Kerala as a whole with, say, a district like Jalgaon, particularly talukas like Raver in Maharashtra, in the banana growing part of eastern Khandesh, you will see that almost a significant proportion of banana from those areas is actually exported out of India. So it's not just value addition that is adequately explored, but export potential is not also adequately explored in banana. Most of it is actually domestically consumed, including in some neighboring states. But so it is not yet a crop with the kind of vibrancy that can revive farmers' incomes in a big way. There are different constraints, ecological, irrigation-wise, etc., which have to be taken care of. So, but I would say banana is a crop with enormous potential, which is a growing crop in terms of area and production. Productivity is not low, but its linkages with value addition are yet to be productively realized till now. So is the case with coconut. Coconut is the name of Kerala comes from coconut, but it's one of the worst value adders in coconut. I'm actually well. It was nice to hear Mr. Balagopal presenting that narrative, but I am a little less optimistic than him in terms of value addition in agriculture happening in the absence of production, productivity, and aggregation happening on a very large scale. I have spoken to, I mean, you're from the sector, you will certainly know more than me, but I've spoken to a large number of agribusiness entrepreneurs across the state, and the one point that they make is always that they need supply of commodities at scale. Supply of commodities not just at scale, but also at similar grades, qualities, and so on, which is severely lacking at present. Big companies. Let's take a company like Raw Pressery, which is the juice manufacturer, one of the leading juice manufacturers in India. You get it in airports, supermarkets, and so on. They have a tender coconut bottle of 175 ml selling at about 250 rupees per bottle. And when I speak to them, they say that they are importing coconut from Thailand in order to make their tender coconut water. Now, I asked them why. They would require a certain quantum of commodities, a certain quantum of coconuts at similar grades and so on every week and so on. That's not simply available. So I think we are underestimating the problem that low productivity and absence of aggregation creates for incentives for investment in agribusiness in the state. I'm not saying that's the only incentive, but we should not underestimate it, is my point of view. It's only if you begin from production and move into aggregation and marketing that facilities for value addition will happen. And if you take most of the successful experiments in agribusiness that you spoke about, Mr. Balagopal, I think you spoke about Synthite. You didn't take the name, but I think you were talking about Synthite in what does Synthite do? Synthite has one of the most wide-ranging contract farming arrangements in the state, where they have buyback arrangements, which is actually a way of creating aggregation. So they were successful because they had aggregation. That
I understand. So Mr. Ramakumar, just one point which I just wanted to add, if I may, Dr. Nirmala, just to this, is that I fully agree with you there. But my point is, I think these are now going on parallel tracks. In other words, for example, if you take Synthite or plant lipids or Cancor Man, which are all about roughly the same size, 1,000 crore plus, and they have multiple plants and they do chili oleoresin, spice oleoresin, they do various oleoresin. They today are not dependent on locally available raw materials. They buy their raw materials from not only across India, but they buy from China. I know Synthite, sources chili. So what is interesting and what is happening, and which is where I would just like to propose that a model for Kerala, and the kind of with the kind of constraints and the kind of resource endowments which we have, which are very similar to, say, other densely populated parts of the world with the mountainous areas like Taiwan and South Korea, etc. A model would be to become something like a globalized manufacturer, where what is the definition for globalized manufacturing is source the material from where it is cheap, process it in your place cost efficiently, so that you are the most efficient in terms of the trinity of manufacturing, which is quality, cost, and delivery, and sell where it is most profitable. So if you see, whether it is my company, which was a medical device company, or Synthite and plant lipids and Cancor Man, or if you take PK Steels, which is a steel casting company, and many others like SFO Technologies, which is making electronic equipment, their raw materials and components are not from Kerala. They only manufacture in Kerala, and their markets are not in Kerala either. And yet they are all highly profitable. So now these are still a small, relatively small, but not that small. It's growing, in terms of it is already reached several tens of thousands of crores. The revenue has reached. These companies are all very shy in terms of disclosing information. So unless we are able to get more accurate data from GST and other sources to be able to get exact assessments, you're going to find that this segment, if it grows. Now, what can public policy do to promote this segment, I think, is something which we need to very seriously look at, not only in Kerala, but across India.
Dr. Joseph, 1 second. That's one sentence. So, Balagopal, I agree, but it is more easy to venture into food processing using raw materials from outside the state and not create any backward linkage in the state, rather than create a food processing industry to have backward linkages in the state. My point is not about creating only forward linkages. My point was also about creating backward linkages.
Okay.
And that is the only way in which you can benefit the farmers in the state. That I'm coming from that perspective. I know where you're coming from. I completely appreciate that viewpoint. So the one more point, for example, look at, a company like Bifa Ayurveda.
Bifa.
Speak to Ajay George. Ajay will tell you that he would like to have 500 acres in one go in the states to cultivate medicinal plants, which will provide raw materials for him, but that land is not available.
Yeah.
Now, how do you create that? You create that only through some kind of. You're not going to bring medicinal plants from anywhere in the world. You can, typically, yes.
It has to be grown
yes.
here.
Yeah, it has to be grown. So, how do you create that backward linkage? Also, if you look at the other, for example, if you look at the Kanjikode Food Park, you will see one of South India's largest pulse processing facilities coming up there under ESAF Cooperative in Thrissur. But they don't procure 1 kilogram of pulse from Kerala. Right? No, that's fine. It's fine. They can come up there, but they don't create any backward linkage. I'm not looking for that. I am looking for that. I'm happy they come. All of them come, but I would more prefer those which have backward linkages in the economy. Dr. Joseph, I'm sorry.
Let me just start to a point here. Again, I'm putting the Kerala model in critique. Point number one. When you talk about the Kerala model, what we talk about, it is public action. It is unquestioned proposition that thanks to public action, people are able to achieve high human development indicators with low per capita income. I think I agree with that very partially, because I would like to articulate, I delivered a P.K. Goval's memorial lecture in the last Science Congress. When I articulated a point, I have not written it up, I'm in the process of writing it up. I would like to say that public action in the Thar desert will not do anything. You have to have the initial conditions for that, well documented here, like social reform movements, and then public action, land reform, etc., etc. Then I would call that foundations of Kerala model was social and governance innovation. But there are limits beyond which you can go beyond which using this S and G innovation. You have to transcend to S and G innovation to S and T innovation, science and technology innovation. As an innovation scholar, when I look at India's science and technology policy, I mean, if you do to the very myopic indication of R&D, early 1990s, India used to spend 8.8% of the GDP on R&D. Today it is 0.64, 0.16 less. China from 0.8 to 0.6%, 4 times increase. Now I want to ask whether ever the central government articulated effectively in any of the science and technology policy pronouncements, either from, of course, 1958 science policy resolution was wonderful. Then came 83, then 91, so 93, whatever it is. So
have anyone articulated the role of science and technology in fostering subnational level development? Totally missing. So much so that this state, year before last, we prepared the first research and development budget. What state spent? With all our exaggerated calculations, it could not go beyond 0.3%. And it was only in 2020, Dr. Isaac articulated the idea of transforming Kerala to a knowledge economy. We had to wait so much. You know what I'm trying to say? And if you think that if you can have development with on science and technology innovations, and of course other innovations, I value them more. I think we totally lagged behind in agriculture, particularly when you're talking about where is Kerala, which crop in Kerala has highest productivity? Only cardamom. That is because of Kerala's productivity in cardamom from 70 kilogram to now 700 kilogram is thanks to a grassroots innovation. Our formal R&D at the level, but we did not do anything. So what I'm trying to say is that there has not been appropriate articulation of the role of science and technology. I mean, of course, Achyutamani established different institutions. After that, how much we have, what we have done? We have sold off these institutions to central government. Many of them were taken over by that. I told, in fact, to our, to Gauriamma that selling ER&D unit, taking away ER&D unit of Keltron is the first coffin in a of Keltron's decline. Without R&D, no other industry has developed. We were trying to do without that. So what I'm trying to say,
finish it off.
What I'm trying to say is that for me, starting with the point, foundations of Kerala model is S and G innovation. And we miserably failed in the trajectory of S and G innovation to S and T innovation. That is the thing. And it will include all kinds of your, in 2002, when I went to Bangkok, I found all kinds of agriculture products in the airport processed. Then that's why we put the points like India as a commodity board. When to Cambodia, they said what to do with this coconut husk. They don't know. I think 124 products are in the coconut development board has 124 products of Kerala products. I mean, coconut-based products. They don't know. So there is India as a commodity chain, India as a commodity boards, India as a corporation in agriculture. This thing, nothing was implemented. But when we go ahead with the competition. So what I'm trying to say that institutions and innovations, it has to co-evolve. We have to look at very carefully about where are we in terms of. Okay, anyway.
So there's I think people are putting very on the chat box that time is running out. It's a very but informative session. Last one question that was in the chat box is inequality in Kerala the highest among all states? Anyone would like to take or?
There is no data for dear friends. I said very interesting question. There is no clear data on inequality which we can say because there is no income data. What we have is consumption data as early as in 2000. I think KK Subramanian and Shyam, they have a consumption data analysis. They found that Kerala's, going by the consumption data, Kerala's inequality is one of the highest states. But then that has to be seen in terms of the nature of structural change that we have seen in this country. In this country, almost 60% of the GDP is coming from what is called service sector. I'm not Kerala, in India. Then that accounts for only 33% of the employment. Whereas in agriculture, you have got something like 17% of the GDP. That is contributed by 50% of the population. That means per capita productivity variation across sectors really explains your growing inequality. So I would say that Kerala is actually growing. Inequality is not, and we don't think that inequality is growing only in Kerala. Inequality is increasing everywhere. That is because the fact of the case is that we are advised the state should take a back seat. Market should do. And in that whole process, all of the world inequality is crossing limits which is beyond acceptable levels, which has been shown by Indian authors like Indian scholars like Deepak Nair and others on regulating globalization and other things. And even it's a global concern. Naturally, Kerala also it is. Of course, it has got a lot of initiatives to reduce that, to despite all that, we have there are two: good inequality and bad inequality. I would say. Good inequality, I would say that your basic minimum necessities are met. That's why your multidimensional poverty is much low. Still, there are people growing because your remittance income and other things. Bad inequalities, richer is getting rich and poor fellow is not having nothing to eat. That is not the case in Kerala. Chinese case is also, in fact, China also, in fact, inequality is high, but basic minimum requirements are met there. You don't find any hungry man on the street. You don't find any, that is the difference. You don't find any beggars in the street in Kerala.
So I think we'll stop with this. So Charan, can we conclude? Charan, you're on mute. You're on mute.
I must thank you for this excellent discussion. I know it's taken about 2.5 hours, but I would say that this was, every minute was worth it. So thank you, Nirmala, for not stopping them and they all talking their heart out. That was such an important topic, and I think everybody had to speak at length. The question answer session also was interesting, and I must thank each one of you, the speakers, the chairperson of the session, that you have shared your thoughts on Kerala so beautifully. The recording will be available tomorrow. I would invite you to use the recording, as you know, many people in our forum use the recording more. Today is a festival day, and despite being a festival day, you all have attended, the participants, asked questions. I really want to thank you for your interest. As I mentioned in the beginning, we are going to continue this exercise of comparing one state and the other and learning from each other. In the list of states that we have in mind, we have West Bengal, and then we have Orissa, and then Bihar, Jharkhand, and Mizoram, which are coming up. We'll be scheduling them. We are all booked up till end of February, but March, we will be scheduling them, or any other slot which falls vacant during this time, we will schedule it. So we would be sending you our invites and you would know exactly which state is being scheduled. You know that today I've mentioned we had observed a minute of silence in honor of our dear friend Dr. Bibek Debroy. Most probably on 6th of November, which is a Wednesday, we will be having an online session dedicated to Professor Bibek Debroy. I'll send you an invite for that too. On November 8th, which is a Friday, we are going to have the next session, and I'll send you the invite for that also. Most probably, we are going to have the World Bank speaker, Ian Kos, to speak about reforms at the global level. The time and date is being finalized with him. That's why I'm not able to tell you right now, but he will be speaking most probably from 6:30 p.m. in the evening to 8 p.m., depending where he is located on that day. He's based in Washington, D.C., but he's traveling, and that is why there's little uncertainty on the time, which I will announce in the flyer in a day or two. With that, let me thank you once again. On a holiday, on a special day like this, we are having this session. November 1 is the Formation Day of Kerala, thanks to Professor Nirmala, who suggested that we organize it on this day. Thank you for that. And thank you all the panelists for giving us the details that you have shared with us. Good night, have a great weekend, and then I see you on 6th and on 8th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you all.